It's a joy and wonder to welcome today's guest back to the show in the week in which Wrexham secured their quite delirious return to the third tier and counting of the English football pyramid, League One, baby, for the first time in 19 long years. And as someone who grew up in Liverpool, so close to and often in and around North Wales, I understand just how much this club have languished, how hard the entire region of North Wales had been left to suffer. So to watch the SToK Ras resounding amidst the raptures of a 6-goal rout of Forest Green and everything that came after is to truly understand what back-to-back promotions mean for the fan base and the whole town. So to relive this moment, to mark it, to understand really this epic Greek poem of a journey being lived out live by my guest and the entire Wrexham nation, it is so lovely to see a 6'7" being on our screens. He's eaten college Yao Ming in his third full year as Wrexham's executive director, 24/7 football whisperer for Robin Ryan, and just an unmistakable part of the club's recent success, although he's too humble and modest to claim any of it. I raise my glass of delicious SToK cold brew to he's big, he's red, his feet stick out the bed. Welcome back, it's Humphrey Carr.
Hello. Thank you for having me back.
Well, Humph, that was a bit, I'd say exhausted, maybe hungover. Can I just ask you, League One Wrexham, Humph, how does that sound? How does that feel?
It feels wonderful. You know, great reward at the end of a very long journey this season for us, with highs and lows and everything in between, middles. There was occasional middle.
Bite your arm off for a middle, Humph.
Yes, the middles, yes, we're more than content with the middle. You know, it feels something nice and poetic that being, as you say, in the 20th year after the kind of the takeover by the much maligned former owners of the club, who when Wrexham got relegated from League One under their stewardship, you know, now 20 years later, in the post Hamilton Gutterman Everybodyman era and the post Wrexham Supporters Trust era, are back in League One, where, you know, I think a lot of our fans see as our natural habitat.
We will discuss that and more, but excuse my Welsh, I believe congratulations in Welsh is something like Clongi Farc I Adawso. So Clongi Farc I Adawso to you and Wrexham, to the players, to the staff, to everyone involved with the club, including whoever's currently hosing down the Rex the Dragon costume, on what I think is a truly transformative achievement. One season back in the Football League, you're moving up already another level, back-to-back promotions for the first time in the club's 159-year history. Big question first, Humphrey. What percentage of the town still hungover?
I think it's high. I had to exit the scene stage left pretty quickly because I went to the EFL Awards on Sunday. We had 2 players nominated in the EFL League 2 Team of the Season. We had a player nominated for EFL League 2 Player of the Season in Arthur Okonkwo and Elliot Lee. And I had to go and man-mark Arthur because we knew there'd be lots of people from other football clubs there. And as we were desperate to retain him this summer, you know, I've got to make sure he doesn't have too much polite chit-chat with people without me kind of appearing over his shoulder. Like, what are you guys talking about?
Hey, guys.
Hey, hi, I'm here too. I a bit disappointingly, a bit like last year, I did not go too hog wild on Saturday night, knowing that I had to drive down to London the next day. That said, despite that, I went hog wild enough that my 3-hour journey took about 5 hours because I had to keep pulling over and being like, oh God, please, are there any Red Bulls in this lay-by? What if I sort through the cans in the bin here? Maybe there'll be the dregs of a Red Bull. I should have had some SToK cold brew coffee, of course. The thinking person's driving stimulant. My top decadence was I ate a curry in the bath, which for me is about as red hot as it gets. And I really hope your viewers and listeners will picture that image.
Is that just like the we've made it moment for you, Humphrey? You're like, that is the day. You always have an urge to have a curry in the bath, but only when Wrexham are promoted do you strip off naked and just bubble bath and vindaloo, that 1-2 combination. Is that like, do you look at yourself and be like, I deserve this, I earn this, it's as good as it gets?
Yes, well, fortunately, the weather was suitable for that. I was a bit worried it'd be a bit warm and I'd feel guilty having a hot bath and eating a curry in it, but not a bit of it. It was sort of blustery and cold and wet, so it was tremendous.
Can I say, this is a side question, but I know I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you. At what age did you realise that you were that kind of guy, the curry in the bath guy? Was it accidental or was it by design? How did you first realise that was one of life's simple pleasures for Humphrey Cup?
I do remember the first time I did it. It wasn't that long ago because I took a picture of it, stuck on my Instagram. It was Christmas about 4 or 5 years ago. I remember my wife flew into London and I picked her up from the airport and we went to a hotel in London to do a bit of sort of Christmas shopping before we went to my mum and dad's for Christmas. And we had a bath in our room, very, very posh. And I remember we ordered curry from one of our favourite curry houses and she ate in the bed. And I know exactly what was happening. It was the World Cup final, France versus Argentina. Yeah, I watched the last half an hour of that in the bath, eating a curry,
eating a vindaloo. It's almost too much stimulation, Humphrey.
I'm ashamed to say it was a very weak korma, which is being as I am. I'm a bit of a korma of a man, so.
This is amazing. Many people remember that game as Messi's finest moment. Many people remember it as just the Salt Bay debacle that ended the World Cup. You're just like, no, that was the day I discovered the bath, the korma.
Anytime I see Lionel Messi now, my mouth starts watering and I start thinking about getting into a hot bath.
By the way, bath curry, 2 words that are both a reason to live and a potential way to die. I do need to, I'm not sponsored by Wrexham's finest curry house that I've ever been to, the iJazz, but have you been?
I have. It's the best one. I'm one of the very great things about my position at Wrexham is that people are very sweetly, if I put out a tweet saying, I fancy a curry, where should I go? I will get a solid assortment of suggestions, and iJazz came out on top. So that is my curry place of choice.
God, iJazz, if you're listening, if you insert a bath instead of one of the tables, Humph will be there every single bloody night. But I have digressed. I do want to get back to the SToK Kairas on Saturday. After Wrexham lumped 6 past Forest Green Rovers, including 4 in the first half alone, in a truly relentless display. Honestly, the footballing equivalent of Conan O'Brien drinking Da Bomb hot sauce straight from the bottle. The permutations for promotion, I've got to say, going into the weekend, they were complex. It was like Wrexham needed 5 points from their final 3 games, but promotion was a possibility last weekend. Stay with me here, listeners, if Wrexham won, then Barrow and also MK Dons lost their games. Humphrey, be honest, promotion was close, touching distance, but it was also reliant on results elsewhere. How were you feeling before kick-off? How did you approach the day? I
very much was of the opinion that we would win, but I thought that one of the others would go the wrong way for us. So I thought, MK Dons, who've been brilliant, were at home against Mansfield, who've been a little bit erratic recently. I think that's fair to say, with the greatest of respect. And so we thought, we'll win, someone else will win, and perhaps it'll be tonight, Tuesday. This is when we're recording this. Spoiler alert, for peek behind the curtains fans. Tonight, perhaps someone would drop points, and we would win it sort of, or gain promotion from afar, due to a set of circumstances sort of beyond our control. So I think when we did get promoted, it slightly caught me on the hop, which from listening to a bunch of the club's podcasts and talking to people around the building, and we all, I think collectively, without having discussed it, everybody was a bit like, well, we'll win today and that'll be great, but then we'll have to wait a little bit longer. And as the game went on, I didn't really check my phone throughout. I was trying to sort of concentrate on what was happening. Discipline. Very disciplined, like a sort of, a Shaolin monk in many respects. They too eat a lot of curry in the bath, I'm led to believe. That's how they get those washboard abs. You could tell at certain points our fans started going crazy in the tech end. You could sense that. There was a crackle. Yes, there was a real crackle. There was some point, at about the 70th, 80th minute where they suddenly started going crazy and chanting, like, we are going up, we are going up. And at that point, I did go, well, I'll just have a quick look and see what's going on. And at that point, it became clear that, barring a terrible collapse by Gillingham and Mansfield, that, we were indeed going up. Were you not looking at your phone because you are disciplined? You want to take in the game in the old school way, as you did when you were a kid? Or were you not looking at the phone because you wanted to manage your own expectations? You wanted to stay away from the possibility of being let down? That's a very good question. I didn't want to get distracted by babes on Instagram. That's always a big problem for all of us.
Currybath.com.
Curry bath. Search the hashtag babes curry bath. Don't do that. I dread to think what would come up. Do you know what it was? I think all day I had been saying to people, lots of people, do you think we're going to do it? Do you think we're going to do it outside, chatting to me, in the car park and things? And I'd said all the way through, look, we've just got to take care of, real cliche, take care of our own business, and we'll worry about what happens elsewhere. And I think in a sort of rather old-fashioned, schoolmasterly fashion, I was like, well, I can't, I've told everyone that we've got to just concentrate on our own thing. So I've got to concentrate on our own thing. Even when we were sort of 5-0 up, and you're like, well, I think our own thing's sort of taken care of.
You've uprooted your life. You spend so much time in Wrexham. You become a football person, Humphrey. You've given yourself to this club. What emotions do you feel from your vantage point at that final whistle? Is it joy? Is it relief? Is it, oh my Lord, the immediate sense of challenge of everything that is to come?
I think it's all those things, really. It's seeing the faces in the crowd and seeing, everybody rush onto the pitch, which of course I strongly condemn, because that's not what you're supposed to do, and it's jolly naughty. But you see people running and carrying their kids, and people wheeling themselves onto the pitch, and from our vantage point up there, it's not a nice place to look out and just see this sea of happiness and joy, and recognise that you've played a part in that, however large or small my part may be. I have contributed to that joy for this town that's given me this incredible welcome. For a lot of people, I think the significance of League One has been that's where the club was when they feel like the bad times began, and so to return there, I think has a sort of special significance. Nothing I think will match the outpouring, the therapeutic, psychic pain dump that was promotion out of the National League last year. But this has been a really special year, and I think this group of players, you're always very reluctant to anoint players or managers as legends in their own lifetime and their lifespan of their time at the club. But I think that particularly the kind of core of people, the lads that arrived this summer in George Evans and Jimmy Mack and Fletch and everybody have been incredible additions, and they will rightly be lauded in the sort of Wrexham history books. But Toes,
Ben Tozer,
and Paul Mullin and Elliot Lee and Owen O'Connell and Tom O'Connor and these players that have been Barney, Ryan Barnett, that have now done back-to-back promotions for this club. That is a feat. There's long been a debate. Where does this team rank in the great Wrexham teams of the past? And I'm sure there will still be a very good argument to say, well, the team that took us from League One, effectively League One into the Championship in 1978 is the greatest team. But these guys have achieved something that no one else has done with these two promotions. And Phil Parkinson, in turn, as a manager, has achieved this incredible feat. And I will be eternally in their debt. On Saturday, as I was accosting various players and trying to dodge them getting beer all over my nice suit, I was, to a lot of them, I said the same thing I said at the end of last year, which was just thank you. Thank you for the work and the effort and the joy that you've brought, everybody in the stadium, but also me personally. Like the joy of it is a huge drug.
God, Phil Parkinson, honestly, I will go to my grave believing that he deserves a knighthood for services to the F word. But at the final whistle, it was the word delirious scenes. I mean, supporters carrying Stephen Fletcher around on their shoulders. Paul Mullen cracking open a bottle of EFL branded champagne. I mean, take us there. What were your memories of that immediate aftermath to not the destination, but just such an important moment of the journey?
The immediate aftermath for me is we were sort of up in the Betty Buzz suite where the owners tend to travel when where they watch the games from. They couldn't come this time because they're both filming. So the interesting thing was that in the group chat, Rob and Ryan were very engaged early on. Then it went very quiet.
What's the group chat called, by the way?
It's just called Wrexham. It's a bit boring, isn't it? But I think it's designed that way because the contents of it are explosive. And they, both went very quiet, and then suddenly both came back in at about, I think we were 2-0 up, and then we didn't hear anything from them. Ryan, I think was the first one back and was just like, oh my god, all in capital letters. Like, I've been filming, I've been shooting. They just called cut, and I came up to look at my phone, and we scored 3 more goals. And I just switched on the video. He's got a laptop open, I guess, with the game on there as well. He's like, I just saw Barney's goal. Like, oh my god, you know. So, and then Rob reappeared shortly thereafter because they're literally both filming. My wife, as many people know, works with Rob, is co-creator on Mythic Quest, so she was on set with him as well, and can confirm that he was extremely distracted and not at his usual professional best on set, because he was, I think, checking the scores and looking at his phone too much. But yes, they both reappeared in time for the finale, and you know, Rob called me very shortly after full time just to say congratulations, and we shared a nice moment. And then by that stage, they'd managed to just about persuade everybody to get off the pitch so we could do a kind of presentation, get the old traditional video and picture of them behind the promoted board. There's no more amazing place to be than in the mix right after something like this. I've done it twice now, and it's magical. And there are kids running around and playing, you know, everybody's children, all the players' children are on the pitch, very adorably, usually dressed in a shirt with their dad's number on the back, and then Daddy as the name on the shirt. Almost enough to make me want to have children, but I would probably also have to become a professional footballer to justify them getting a shirt with Daddy on the back. So sorry, children everywhere, none of you are going to be mine. And yeah, I made my way down there, and as I said, just sort of started accosting people really, because they were having a great time. The SToK cold brew coffee end, they assembled in front of that, and you know, were getting serenaded with each of their individual songs, and you know, the players were just reveling in each other's company. I think one of the great achievements of this Wrexham squad of the last 2 years that's you know, purely down to Phil and Steve Parkin, his assistant manager, is the camaraderie, is the like love affair that they have with each other. And you know, seeing James McLean, who's, you know, very experienced old stager, he's been through all sorts of things, you know, shoving Max Cleworth to the fore to receive his you know, 21-year-old.
He looks young enough to be wearing a shirt with Daddy on the back.
Yes, it feels like one of the stewards should have been pushing him towards James McLean's children. Stick with them, lads. Try not to get separated. In order to achieve what we've achieved, we've needed immense performances from across the team over this year. And you know, Max is someone who's the perfect example, you know, encapsulates that in, you know, came in due to an injury crisis just before Christmas, probably seen by most as a bit of a stopgap until others returned from injury, and just blossomed and flourished, and, you know, scored his first goal for the club at an incredibly critical juncture away to Colchester. And actually, he's kind of done that 2 seasons in a row, because he came in the National League and sort of did the same thing last year. So it shouldn't come as any surprise to anyone that he's risen to the challenge. And I think he's someone with a huge future at 21, having played such a pivotal role in a promotion from League Two. I think we'll see a lot more of Max in the future.
Couple of quick questions. First of all, is Hugh Jackman in the Wrexham chat? Is Jackman in it?
No, this is a private chat. I don't know if there's a sort of separate "We've been to Wrexham" group chat with Hugh Jackman and Paul Rudd and Will Ferrell, but I am not on that one, if there is one.
You hit upon this with a glancing blow, but I do want to circle back to it. How did Saturday and the jump to League One compare to last season's? I mean, just exhale more than anything. That overdue escape from the National League emotionally. Second time round, a wiser you, awareness of where you are on the mountain exactly. Emotionally, how do you compare them?
Escape from the National League, and that's really what it felt like, it was very much like Andy Dufresne in the rain at the end of Shawshank Redemption. It was sort of on the knees, breast bared to the sky. You know, we did it. We're free. We're out. We escaped. And, you know, I think for everybody in the town, you know, I remain, despite my 4 years, a relative neophyte in Wrexham. You know, I can't tell you how many people I speak to say, I've been coming here for 70 years, or I've done this, you know, X, Y, and Z. And it's true. You know, there have been people that have been going there. You know, we had Arthur Massey, our oldest fan. We celebrated him before Tranmere. I think 1931 was his first game there. So there are an awful lot of people that have had a lot more Wrexham in their lives for a much longer time than I. But even I felt the kind of this sense of, a shame may be too strong a word on my part, but I think for a lot of people there was a sense of shame that like, oh, we're supposed to be a proper league club. We've got this incredible history, and we're down in the doldrums. So escaping that was a huge outpouring of relief as much as anything. This one was more joyful. This was, I mean, I would have been very disappointed if we had not gone up this season, given the quality of the squad we have and the quality of the manager and the support and everything. And we've had some difficult patches. There's no question of that, but we have regularly walloped teams in this division, and we've given very good accounts of ourselves, and we've, particularly against some of the better quality teams in the league. We beating Notts County home and away, beating Mansfield there in the, drawing there, beating them there in the FA Cup, beating them at the racecourse, beating Barrow at home. We should have beaten them away. We've given a really good account of ourselves. So to not go up would have been a disappointment, but this one, just felt like purely, there was a purity to it, a joy. The relief wasn't as mixed in as it was last year.
You're talking about the Shawshank Redemption, and I just got sad because we know that Brooks didn't make it to see Wrexham return to League One. But the last time we spoke, you talked quite beautifully about how you left last season's promotion celebrations early because you're a very decent man. I love that you did this. You'd sweated through your shirt. And you had, and these are your exact words to me, Humphrey Kerr. You said you had unbelievably bad BO, and so you had to exit the scene. Humphrey, I've got to ask for everyone, because this is probably the only important question. Did you remember your Old Spice Swagger deodorant on Saturday?
I did, yes. I won't say what the brand was, because I don't think that we, any of us have an appropriate sponsorship deal with them. But
we know you're an axe man, Humphrey.
It's Lynx Africa. As we call it in the UK, Axe Africa, whatever it is. Yes, I thought about this during the day, which I did not do last. Well, last year I was running around like a headless chicken all day and then sweating nervously. This time I just sweat nervously, but I was starting from a much better. Well, I wasn't even that nervous this time. It was all round. Let's just say I got a very good score, BO wise, from the people that I hugged on Saturday night. If I've got to cite anyone in court, I'll cite Stephen Fletcher, who got a very. We embraced, and then he asked me many questions about my suit, and so we were in a sort of tight embrace.
Stephen Fletcher turned around to you and goes, I don't like to overstep my boundaries, but you smell lovely. Just getting into that conversation.
It was just more complimenting me on my suit. It's like, that's a good suit, I like this. It's a very, very nice... Where's this from? And actually I was like, well, actually it's a Scottish tailor, so we...
Really?
Oh, yes, yeah. Walker Slater. That I will give a plug, because if they want to send me a bunch of free suits, boy, oh boy, I'd take them.
I'm a 34 regular, if you need to know Walker Slater. I'm just saying. But I am so unbelievably moved where, from the stories from long-time Wrexham supporters. That in those moments, that's what really draws me into that story. Those who remember, who lived the soul crunch in 2007-8 season when the team won only 10 games, finished 24th out of 24 teams in League Two, falling into that National League exile, where they spent the next 15 years Sisyphusian style trying to and failing to push their way out. Like Sisyphus, if he'd been sponsored by Ivor Williams trailers. But the supporters celebrated on the field on Saturday, and the legendary announcer, he's really a remarkable human being, Mark Griffiths. He talked about how he remembered the dark days 20 years ago when Wrexham went into administration bankruptcy with docked 10 points, relegated to League Two, saying, quote, this is his quote, he said, I remember sitting in a hotel room, listening to us getting beaten at Peterborough and thinking, we're finished as a club here. So what do you even say to supporters who thought they may never see days like this again? How many of those stories have you heard in moments of darkness coming out in moments of light?
Often people ask me like what my favourite thing is about doing this, and there are many and various things that I love. And one very sort of simple, silly thing that I say is wearing the badge into the stadium and for the first time in my life being genuinely a part of that. I mean, the fans are a part of it, of course, but I day in my past, I continue with considerably less energy to be a Liverpool fan. And I would go to Anfield and I would, buy the shirt and I'd go in. But I always felt a bit, especially as I'm not from Liverpool, for anyone watching from the States, I'm unmistakably un-Liverpudlian.
And by the way, when I was growing up, you would not hear a single human being with Humphrey's accent, probably within about a 50-mile radius of the Liverpool city limits.
I mean, you don't, outside of sort of Ealing comedies, you don't hear many people with my accent anyway, anywhere, really. Yes, I'm very posh. I often say to American people that my accent in England is like, when you hear those people who are like, you simply must come down to the Hamptons this weekend. This is what British people, when they meet me, they're like, oh, he's one of those guys, like just a real monster. Yes, so my silly, well, not silly, genuine but simple answer often is like, oh, I love, walking in with my little GA on with my badge and going and swiping my pass and being like, oh, I really am part of this, rather than a sort of an interloper or a parvenu or a poser or a whatever, which is all my stuff rather than what football fans are. Do you know what I mean? That's my sort of sense of guilt at like, oh, you shouldn't be pretending to be a Liverpool fan. You should have been a dedicated Reading fan, which is where I'm from. But my actual favourite bit of the whole thing is talking to people, as I have so many times, whether it's someone like Tommy or whether it's someone like the guys from Fearless and Devotion, or even many dozens of lovely people whose names I have remembered for the briefest span of time when I've been speaking to them and then never seen again, who have come up to me and said, I've been coming here for 50 years. I met my husband here. I used to bring my kids here. I came here first on a school trip, or I did, whatever it may be, whatever their connection into this great and glorious place was. And I caught the bug, and I loved it. And I would come here when there were 2,000 people here watching us get beaten by Ebbsfleet in the National League. And I was here when we played, Porto in the Cup Winners' Cup first round, or I was here when Mickey Thomas and Steve Watkin beat Arsenal in 1992. But so many of them have said, over the years, I just couldn't bring myself to come anymore. I couldn't bear seeing this thing that I loved circling the drain and being on the edge of destruction. And, you guys have brought it back to life. And that's the best thing that has ever happened to me in my life, really. And I loved my other job as an actor and writer, and I've derived enormous pleasure and lots of feelings of satisfaction and self-worth that I've derived from that. But nothing can compare with that, really.
By the way, I'm hoping I'll feel the same about 777 and be able to say that to them when they've successfully taken over Everton, because I just know they're going to take us to a great place, a safe place.
Yes.
But also hearing these stories, it reminds me of that Dante Inferno quote, there's no greater sorrow than to be mindful of the happy time in misery. The Wrexham fans in this moment, there's no greater happiness than to remember the dark times in a moment of promotion, which you provided back to back.
By the way, do they get any Dante out on the rest is football or whatever it is? I doubt it.
I don't know, but all over the tech end, the SToK Kairas end, they know exactly that it's Francesca who says it to Dante in Canto 5 of the Inferno. That's what the listeners are saying to each other in this moment, and Godspeed for that, because it is a beautifully human dynamic. And this season, we now know how it ends. But it has been no straight line march to glory. I want to go back to the beginning, starting with the first match of the League Two campaign, a 5-3 loss. God, that was galling. I remember watching that game at home to MK Dons. Super Paul Mullin, the club's talismanic striker, really a beautiful human being. One of the joys of my year has been getting to know him a little bit. He was recovering from several broken ribs, a punctured lung, suffered after a fairly gruesome collision with Manchester United's young backup keeper during Wrexham's pre-season tour game in San Diego. And it's fair to say, first month of the season, it was a bloody reality check. It was a challenge. One win out of the first 5 games. On top of that, your iconic goalkeeper, Ben Foster, he of 97th minute penalty heroics against Notts County, retired after just 4 games into the season, making his return to League Two shorter than the Golden Bachelor's marriage. Take us back there, Humphrey, to that early learning curve. What were you thinking last August about what your team would need to do and know to adapt and develop to life in League Two?
I think, yeah, I mean, obviously the first few games were a bit of an eye-opener. We had obviously the MK Dons game, we had Swindon at home, we had Crewe at home, like some high-scoring draws. We went away to Wimbledon and had that 1-1 there. But I think, genuinely, in all honesty, I always had faith that we would sort of get our act together in a way. I think, when you consider that January brought in Jack Marriott and Luke Bolton, and who have contributed certainly through to the end of the season, but ultimately, like, it's the players we had on September the 1st, by the end of that are the ones that have won this promotion. And I was always very confident that we weren't really showing the best of ourselves in those first few games. It wasn't like, oh, well, we're playing we're playing brilliantly, but we're getting beaten by everybody. We were a bit crap, and I think I say that in the confidence that the players in Phil would agree. I think the proximity of our return from the US tour last year was the gap between the return and the first game was too short. I think we were confident that we'd be able to recover better than we actually did end up recovering. And, and of course, it's just that getting used to, like, we've played for a year collectively. Most of these players have played together at this stage for a year against, a lower standard of opposition. You're coming up against MK Dons, who, ended the season like a freight train. Obviously, one of the division's very strongest teams, just come down from League One. And, yeah, it was a bit of a cold shower. Time to wake up.
You mentioned, the confidence. There was that second spell, because your adjustments worked. Wrexham only had 3 additional League Two losses for the rest of the 2023 calendar year. But going into January, February, as you mentioned, you brought in Luke Bolton, 24-year-old defender, former Man City Academy player, Jack Marriott, 29-year-old striker. But you went into a mini tailspin, 3 straight losses for the first time since April 2021. There was a caution in the play, and the results kind of reflected that. What was the mood surrounding the club during those dark winter days? Was there ever a time that doubt did creep in when the belief did start to slip? Or were you always just certain through the waves this ship could turn itself around?
Well, I think we've always had a philosophy of stability being a good thing, of ensuring that when the going gets tough, everybody knows that they've got their backs, so that we're not. There are other clubs in the division that we looked at that at times were sacking managers because they, had been on a winning run and they drew a couple of games and it was like, get rid of him. And you're like, oh gosh, that seems like a best of luck to you. But it's not how I would necessarily think you're going to get the best possible results out of your staff and players. So there was never any conversation at all about, changing or what do we do or what issues can we make. I mean, I think that February difficult period coincided with some key injuries. We had George Evans out, we had Tom O'Connor out, and I think they're so central to the way we play, which is not any disrespect to their replacements, who are also all brilliant players and, did extremely well. But we had this strange thing this season where we had a period of time when a chunk of centre-backs got injured. We had a period of time when a chunk of central midfielders got injured. But if you'd sort of blended, if we'd only lost a couple of centre backs and one midfielder at that stage, we'd have been fine. And if we'd only lost, and then same the other way, where we'd only lost one centre back and a couple of central midfielders, we'd have been all right. But it seemed to be like we had, December, January, we were missing centre backs. February or January, February, we were missing central midfielders. And I think if we'd kept all of those guys fit for the full whack, it would have been quite a different February. And, we might be champions elect at this stage. Paul's injury as well, you talked about earlier, that saw him get off to a slow start. It saw him, I think across December and January, he was struggling a little bit to be at his best. I think that missed chunk of pre-season was sort of catching up with him a little bit. And he was missing Ollie Palmer, who has been such an effective foil for him. I mean, Fletcher's an unbelievable player, but I think Ollie's physicality and his mobility and his ability to kind of really ruin the afternoon of whatever poor, hapless centre-back he decides to occupy himself with, that he bats around like a sort of tiger with a slab of meat in a zoo. Injuries change seasons, and overall we've been very lucky. I think actually Stockport's injury crisis this season is insane, and they deserve enormous credit for finishing on top of the pile as they have done, given all the difficulties they've had.
I love watching Ollie Palmer. He plays football like Vinnie Jones acts in any Guy Ritchie movies he's in, and it is utterly magnificent to witness. Yeah. But Paul Mullin returned, that king of Scouse strikers, banged in 25 goals in 41 appearances. I loved it when he hit the century mark, scoring his 100th goal for Wrexham. Just the joy, the affinity, the man savouring the moment, the fans echoing it back. Thus far, Elliot Lee has added 16 goals, including a dramatic match winner against Sutton United, which really put an end to that February skid. But Wrexham have also put together one of the best ensemble casts outside of a Coen Brothers movie. Central contributions from the outstanding Sam Dolby. You mentioned young goalkeeper Arthur Okonkwo on loan from Arsenal. 34-year-old James McLean seems to have stocked up on James Milner's youth elixir. But which player has stealth surprised you and that you've really savoured this season outside of the regular cast of characters?
I wouldn't say it was a surprise, but I think this season we have seen Andy Cannon really showing us like the best of himself. He was great last year in the run-in. I think he arrived with us in January and played a really pivotal role through to the end of last season. And he started this season, I think he would agree, in quite indifferent form, but I think there were a number of factors at play with that. The challenges that he had to overcome off the pitch, which distracted is a wrong word, but I think had just been sharing headspace with the brain that he needed to run our midfield. Once those were resolved, I mean, he's been sensational. I mean, his physicality, Elliot, George Evans and Andy are a top-class League One midfield, really, and on their day, they're as good a midfield as any in outside of the Championship, I think. He's been kind of my player of the season, I think. I mean, Paul has, in characteristic Paul fashion, managed to miss a bunch of games, then have a difficult patch, but still wind up as basically the division's best striker. And funny enough, this is some hot gossip that I've not shared with anybody, but I went to the EFL Awards on Sunday night, as I talked about earlier, and our table was right next to Blackburn, who obviously beat us in the FA Cup. When the nominees for League Two Player of the Season came up, I could hear all the people at the Blackburn table be like, where's Mullin? Why is Mullin not on that list? Including Sammy Smodix, who knows a thing or two about scoring goals. I think that is a reflection of, awards are awards, and they're not always the best barometer of who's done what, but Paul's contribution this season has again been bananas. I mean, the number of goals he scored in 3 seasons for us, but I think he has the best goal to minutes ratio in League Two, and again, he's missed a huge chunk of games. You wonder what if we'd had Paul firing fit from the 8th of August or whenever our first game was. Perhaps we'd be out of sight by now.
You're still the first team to win back-to-back promotion from the National League to League Two and on to League One since Tranmere Rovers in 2018-19. It's a whole new world. I mean, League One can be an absolute meat grinder of a league. Competition includes teams like Reading, Bristol City, Wigan Athletic that were playing in the Championship. Some of them in the Premier League just a couple of seasons ago. Could theoretically include Huddersfield Town, who were a Premier League club just 5 years ago. Can you give us an early sense of how you, Humphrey, understand the difference between League Two and League One and what adjustments you believe Wrexham need to make this summer to be ready?
Well, I think you've touched on a big one there, which is just the quality of opposition. I mean, the jump from National League to League Two is big. The jump from League Two to League One is even bigger, I think. And I think there's also there's a jump from the bottom half of League One to the top half of League One. In and amongst the lower echelons of League One, clubs that you would say are commensurate with League Two clubs that we've played this season. But at the top, you've got, as you say, sort of Portsmouth. There's the danger of a Birmingham or a Huddersfield, or I think Birmingham have sort of got themselves out of it now. But, big clubs with 25,000, 30,000 crowds, that are well-resourced, well-backed, well-developed, well-established. 18 months ago, to get a player out of a League One club was a huge coup for us. We played Shrewsbury in the FA Cup this year. They've really struggled in League One this season, and they were good. We eked out a win there, and we played very well. But if that's the sort of treatment we're going to get going away in the league, in League One, it's going to be a long season. I mean that in terms of not surrendering to a long season of difficulty, but we are going to have to fight for every single point we get. I don't think there will be too many 6-0s on the cards for us next season. But, our approach will be, as it has been every summer and every winter, we look to improve the squad. We'll look to refresh and renew the playing squad. And I think there's a core of a great League One team that we've got here, and we'll look to make additions to that.
In your final home match, an epic rumble against league leaders Stockport County, the eternal Newman to Wrexham Seinfeld. They've also secured automatic promotion to League One. Surely there'll be another massive celebration for the players after that. A bit like last year's trip to Las Vegas, the steak dinners, the Steve Aoki sets. So many consecutive days of shirtless Ollie Palmer honestly warranted a government health warning.
Yes, I think it'll be interesting because we can still technically catch Stockport. I referenced them finishing on top of the pile earlier. It's a bit of classic reverse psychology. I'm hoping they'll watch
Take
the pod.
Foot off the gas.
And take the foot off the gas and let us just sneak by them. I think there are plans afoot to ensure that the lads have a lovely trip abroad somewhere to celebrate come the end of the season. I've suggested we just get them tickets to Cirque du Soleil. Like, they can go back to Vegas, but do a very different Vegas that's just all spa days and Cirque du Soleil. And
they can go to the iJazz in Wrexham for a curry.
Yes. Or maybe we find somewhere with just 30 baths all laid out next to each other.
Oh, lads, trust me, this is luxury.
I know you want to go to Vegas and party with babes, but very much bath and a curry for you lot, I think.
But we wrote on Instagram, Wrexham Vegas 2 Electric Boogaloo, and Ryan Reynolds posted underneath, these are his words, he said, thinking the Tate Modern, or if we really want to get nuts, the National Gallery. Yeah,
well, there's a lot of cultured players amongst our boys. I'm sure they'd love a trip to London to go on. I'll take them on a tour. I'll do a history tour of London with them.
I love Stephen Fletcher with the little earpiece in doing the gallery tour. Lads, keep the noise down. I've got to watch the Degas. Instead of going to Vegas last year, you famously went to Carnarvon Castle in northwest Wales, Hump.
Yes, yeah.
Different gravy, Hump. Tell me you will not be at the Milton Keynes Museum of Computing while everyone else is getting free drinks and face tattoos.
I make no promises. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not sure when the trip is scheduled for, and so if I have to be here, then everyone else will be away and it'll all be quiet, so I probably will go and look at another castle. I've done most of the ones in North Wales. I've not been up Snowdon yet, so I do need to do that at some stage.
Up Snowdon and get the face tat to show it. Is there going to be another parade? The city coming out to celebrate this team?
Only if we win. Parades are for champions. If we're not champions, then I don't think we'll have a parade.
God, Humphrey, tough love.
Tough
Third
talk.
series of Welcome to Wrexham coming out irrespective, May 2nd. Give us a sense of what you got in store for us.
The one thing I can tell you is that there's even more sort of dressing room action this season, which I really like. There's more of the kind of nitty gritty of people shouting at each other at half time because they're not playing very well. And in what I've seen thus far, and otherwise it's more of what I think people love, which is seeing the town, seeing the team, seeing that relationship between those two entities, and getting to know more of our players and more of our new players and new wonderful people from around Wrexham. So yeah, from what I've seen thus far, I think people will be excited by what's in store.
And then the tour, you're coming back to your home away from home, the United States of America.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so we're doing a kind of West Coast tour is the plan. I think there'll be a further announcement in the not too distant future about exactly where we're going. But if you live on the western coast of these United States, then you'll have opportunities to see the Red Dragons not too far from you.
I'm breaking the news. They're going to play 3 games in Rob McElhenney's back garden. Let's pull this together, Humph. When I was in Wrexham, February, for the Notts County game, I stood on the formerly Tech end, now the SToK Kairas end, the Wrexham Cop, essentially. It was standing room only. It was packed with the young, truly the devoted. They sang the entire time. Not only was I surrounded by young fans from all over the North Wales, speaking to people, there's a lot of people from the Welsh diaspora who'd scattered all over Britain for work, but came home to Wrexham for every game. And when Stephen Fletcher scored to make it 1-0, I was hugged by a stranger, a sweet and wonderful kid who'd moved from Poland to Wrexham. I think when he was around 11, kind of came of age during the team's dark time. And after that goal, he said something to me. He said, "You don't understand what watching Wrexham, a Wrexham who win, has done for us." He said it's changed everything, not just football, not just the whole town, but even beyond that, it's changed. This is his exact quote. He said, "It's changed what you think is possible as a person living in North Wales." Essentially, and it really struck me because it is so humanly beautiful. Essentially, he was saying everything that felt like it had been closed off for so long felt like it was open and possible now because of what Wrexham had showed was possible. Do you have a sense of that, Humphrey? The impact that this team has had on Wrexham as a city beyond football. Can you put that into words?
Yeah, I really do. You know, I think it's something that right from the word go, Rob and Ryan always saw the football club as kind of a philanthropic engine, like as a means of driving positive kind of social change in the town. And you know, one of the things that when we were looking for teams that attracted us to Wrexham were some of the kind of less good numbers that were available from Wrexham Council on you know, social issues that you know are the bane of towns across the world, really. You know, crime, drug use, obesity, whatever it may be. And Wrexham's numbers in many of those areas were, you know, perversely attractive because we wanted to go somewhere to make a difference. So seeing that there were things that were affectable, that we could affect, was very encouraging. You know, what we have seen in the last couple of years is just this big explosion of kind of positivity. You know, I see around like T-Pub and in the town, you know, people going out to gigs, people writing music, people opening restaurants and bars and businesses, and people using the influx of visitors as a way of driving traffic into the centre of town and making the most of that. You know, I read an article the other day on the BBC, an interview with the Chief Constable of North Wales. He says crime has gone down in Wrexham, and they you know, attribute that to the football club. You know, they've got a challenge on their hands policing our games because suddenly, you know, whereas they needed a very, you know, one or two bobbies and a close
old horse,
to retirement horse. Yes, they now need a larger number because there's big crowds and there's big crowds of away fans, and there's still plenty of challenges for them to overcome. But I think that, you know, what I think the Chief Constable was alluding to was that, you know, exactly what you're talking about, exactly what your friend from of Polish extraction is talking about, this sense of kind of, well, why not us? Why can't we have good things here? Why don't we take care of stuff? Why don't we take a bit of pride in ourselves? And, you know, a lot of people say to me, you know, a story that I've heard a few times, people saying, oh, you know, for a long time when I was working and traveling around the UK and people would say, oh, where do you live? I'd say, oh, near Chester, because that was a kind of a point of reference for people.
By the way, for listeners, Chester and Tommy Kaus, my host of Welcome to of This Week in Wrexham, will be rolling in his grave right now because Chester is just across the line from Wales in England. It's the great rival of Wrexham. So to say that, to have to identify yourself by this horrific to Tommy English town, oh my God, it's pain, it's agony, but you had to do that.
Well, Chester are our big rivals. And I mean, I think as best described by on Saturday when we were 6-0 up, our fans chanting, "Are you Chester in disguise?" Because that's the ultimate insult. Look, Chester is a lovely place. And all the people I've met from there are very nice, but they are our rivals and we would rather not define ourselves by them.
And now they can say anywhere around the world, I'm from Wrexham. Yeah.
And it's a source of pride and it's a source of excitement to share with people. And yeah, I've just seen, and again, so many kind of anecdotal instances of talking to people. I've been into schools in Wrexham. I've been into art galleries and hospitals and hospices and all over the place. And just the thing you hear time and time again is just people have this fresh enthusiasm and excitement to be a Wrexhamite or a Wrexamium or whatever, however we say it.
Last
Wrexamist.
Question.
That's probably right.
Wrexamist. Last question this. Because you've been genuinely joyful and generous with your time, Humphrey. I honestly sprained my scrolling fingers Saturday watching clips of all of the supporters just deliriously celebrating, of Super Paul Mullen standing on a table in the changing room, belting out Jamie Webster's Weekend in Paradise. I got such joy from reading the posts from long-time supporters, like a local named Neil, who tweeted, "The town are forever in debt" to co-owners Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney. But then he added, he called Humphrey Carr the true hero for suggesting that they buy into Wrexham in the first place. And God, there's so many conversations in writers' rooms, so many dreams, so many hilarious quips. It's hard to tell, in a Hollywood writers' room, what's serious, what's not, what's real. You made a joke. You made an insight. It got picked up into something real. It was acted upon. We know the rest of the story, but do you ever stop to think about, Humphrey, your own role in this incredible story, to acknowledge that you are the gent who pushed the little marble? You recommended the Sunderland Till I Die documentary to Rob McElhenney, which started what has become this international, life-affirming Rube Goldberg machine. And if you hadn't, how all of this would be different.
Yeah. No, well, yes, it's something that I often say to people, that it's how I describe my role in all this is a bit like I bought my friend a packet of seeds for like a rose bush, and I was like, "Oh, you should grow some roses." And then they planted them, and I've got other people to water them, and found someone to put the manure on, and found someone else to do the deadheading, and here we are 4 years later with this incredible rose bush. And to have played any part in this, I often say, is, it's the honor of my lifetime, really. I mean, I don't know that I'll ever do anything else nearly as worthwhile in my life, other than being married to my wife and kissing my dog. The two other top things in my life. But it's been an extraordinary journey, and I'm incredibly grateful for it every single day.
Humphrey Carr, you are honestly a remarkable human being. I raise my glass of ice cold SToK cold brew coffee to you, to Wrexham, the team, the town, the fan base. It really is a story of joy and optimism in a world that is too often shorn of both of those commodities right now. To you, the butterfly that flapped its wings in a Los Angeles writer's room and began to change North Wales. Please God forever. To more, Humphrey.
Thank you, Rog. God bless you. I may get a butterfly tattoo on the small of my back now.
Get a tiny little curry bath and a pain dump tattooed on there too. You're amazing. Courage.